4 days now in the spring. Just what are your initial impressions on your defense and kind of the installation of everything?
First off, I think we got a great culture. I think it's really unique. Every job I've ever taken has been with a new head coach. Like I came in on ground zero, and I'm coming in with a new head coach, but it doesn't really feel like ground zero. So that's kind of neat. The culture is pretty stinking good already, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, we got a lot of new guys who need to learn what our standard is. But I really like the look in their eye. They're hungry. They play with energy. There's highs and lows right now, which is to be expected. And we got to develop some more consistency in all aspects, not just effort, but execution and all those things. But overall, I'm pretty pleased to be coming in, installing this defense with the culture that's already here.
What's your number one priority coming in? What's the first thing you want to get?
I want to make sure the standard's upheld in terms of how we prepare and how we practice. And then from my standpoint, just trying to evaluate what our guys are good at and, make sure that I am spearheading our defense to what that looks like. It goes back to Coach Harrell talks about it's about the players, right? Okay, as a coordinator, I think that's important too. Defense is a little different than offense, where I think on defense you need to be able to massage based on your personnel, whether you're more of a 3-man front team or a 4-man front team or a 2-high or a 1-high, whatever it may be. And we've got to be good enough coaches to where if our guys are really good doing that, then we need to have enough answers to put them in the best situation and not just say this is what we do. We're trying to put a lot on them and evaluate what they can handle, but also evaluate what they're good at.
A lot of defensive linemen working out at pro day with 3-4 year starters here.
Mm-hmm.
How was that group? I know it's early in spring, but just like the development of that group, how important will that be for Coach Tess?
I think it's really neat. When you look at guys like a Preston Carr, or a Zion Wilson, a guy that's an older guy that hadn't played a ton but knows how to play the game, and those guys have been really good bridges to the new players. Those guys have kind of been role players in the past and not played a ton, but they've had really good 4 days, in my opinion. And so that's really been a great thing to see because, D-line's what I've actually coached more than any position. And, if you don't got them, you're in trouble. And it starts and ends up front. So really pleased with the development of that group in only 4 days. And then, new guys just really buying into what we want to do.
Through your coaching journey, who are some coaches you've looked up to and kind of model your coaching style around?
So I worked for Scott Simons for 7 years, D coordinator at SMU. I consider him one of my best friends. He had a huge impact on me. And then I'd say Ron Roberts and DJ Durkin. I've been blessed to coach under some of the best D coordinators in the country. So just seeing. The one thing in common with all of them is they're all really intense and organized, but then they all bring different things to the table that I've tried to take from all of them. And we're all a product of our experiences, and I'm definitely a product of mine.
Sam Danka is kind of I call him a unicorn, 6'6",
Yeah.
230. Just how do you see him fitting in? I know he's played some inside linebacker this spring in your defensive scheme.
I think earlier, like when I said about seeing what our players do best, I think of Sam probably first. You look out there, and last year I know they had Sam and Raheem playing the same position, and Jackson, and those 3 of our better players on defense, and just seeing how we can get them on the field at the same time and what that looks like, right? Okay. But Sam has had a good 4 days. It's obviously some newness for him, but he's the type that prepares the right way, and he's a great young man, and he's got a bright future at whatever position he plays.
So Tegan Wilt went to Houston for a year. He's back after a few seasons here at East Carolina.
Yep.
Are you still seeing a huge leadership role from him?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's same song, second verse for him. Even if there's some verbiage that's different, he's just played so much football. That there's something to be said for that. When a guy can take what he's learned somewhere else and say, "Oh, I've called it carpet, and you call it chair," and it's the same thing. Just trying to understand those things is a lot easier when you've played a lot of football. And he's made a lot of plays. We track havoc every day. That's TFL, sacks, PBUs, forced fumbles, and hurries. And I think he's led us in havoc 2 out of 4 practices. So he makes a lot of plays. So.
What do you think about intensity today? Is it something y'all talk about before practice, or something that you talk to them about?
Yeah, I mean, in today's day and age, if you tell the players they're live, which you don't get to do a whole lot, they're usually going to be pretty intense. You know, I thought on both sides of the ball, I thought we both started fast and really physical with inside run, and then at times you get a dip, right? Guys get tired or whatever, but I thought we finished really well on both sides of the ball. You can see that they're competing. They're excited to get out there, and they're really chomping at the bit. So there'll be some bumps and bruises. They'll be off tomorrow, and then we'll have a lighter day Thursday, and then similar day on Friday to today.
With it being the first day in pads, how do you continue to instill that excitement within your players throughout the spring season?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, when you don't have pads on, you're still trying to coach how to play the right way. When the pads come on, there's a proof of concept, right? You can show the video and say, I've been telling you this ain't going to work when this happens, you know, and now it doesn't, right? So I think when you practice with pads, it speaks for itself. Either one of you lost, right? Okay, when we tackle live, he either got the first down or he didn't. There's no, well, I would have tackled him there, or I would have got off that block there. It was a quick whistle. So I actually think it's easier to coach when we have full pads on because there's no gray area, right? And it's when you don't have that on where you got to really hold them to the standard and not cut corners.
Early on, has there been a position group that stood out to you?
Ooh, not really. I mean, every group's had their day. You know, I'd say, like you said earlier, the biggest surprise has probably been the interior D-line. Not because I thought they'd be bad, but it's just a lot of newness there, right? And just they seem to be hitting a good stride. Like I said, with those returners, even though they hadn't played a whole lot, they know how to practice and how to play.
You had to kick Blake out of the inside linebacker room at all yet, or how's that process going?
No. We welcome him in there. You know, he spends a lot of time in the D staff room too, and it's really good for me because, like I said, when you're coaching the kids, maybe we're doing something similar but a little different. You know, I like knowing what they were told before, so you can try to figure out how they grasp it and is there carryover or is this just brand new? You know, so I welcome that, and he's been a great sounding board for me, understanding like what they've done in the past, and just a mentor too. Because he's been a D coordinator for multiple years at different places and done a great job. So there's plenty of situational football I can learn from him and things like that.
You know, DJ Johnson, Julian Davis, two guys that have been here a while, kind of waiting for their turn. Do you kind of sense that hunger this spring from them?
Yeah, I think they're two totally different players. Julian's a guy who's got some rush ability. He honestly is kind of like Sam. You can line him up and let him go in on third down and move him around a little bit because he's such a bigger body, but he still runs really well. And then DJ, is a guy who's really kind of changed his body. He's never going to be the biggest guy, but, just firming up his body and things like that. I think they both had a good 4 days. I thought DJ had a really good day today.